Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Brenda Naven. I am the CEO and the founder of Launch My Health, and I am so excited for our topic today and our guest presenter, Dr. Stefano Sinacropi. And you guys are going to walk away so excited with the information that you learn not only for yourself, but hopefully your organization too. So we are going to get into today's topic. I want to let you know that also on the webinar today, we have Amanda Knutson. She is going to be our moderator. She is going to be monitoring the chat feature, the Q&A feature. So make sure you use that. We want lots of questions, lots of interaction. The more interaction, the better. So make sure you use that. Also want to share with you that we have an upcoming fall webinar. We aren't quite sure on the topic yet, but watch for that. We're going to take the summer off. And then we're also starting in the fall a Food is Medicine meetup. So that will be for everybody who's interested in this Food is Medicine movement to come together, share ideas. It's not going to be about sales. It's going to be about learning about nutrition and how food can really impact our health. So very, very excited about that. So today, the topic we are talking about is mitochondrial health. I'm going to share a little bit more about Dr. Stefano Sinacropi's background in a few minutes, but this is a hot topic. It is a trend, and it's a trend that's here to stay. And what we're really getting at is a very upstream approach to our health. So this might be a new topic for you, and that's okay. You might be a little more seasoned and have heard a little bit more about mitochondrial health, but you're going to get the 101 today. And I'm going to just share a little bit about the nutritional impact of what we eat and how that impacts our mitochondria. So let's get started. So when we think about today in our modern world, our modern healthcare system, right now we have this really transactional healthcare system, and we spend a lot of time in this sick space. So that's represented in this pink bar. And we have this health and vitality that we're thriving, and we spend all this time in sick care, and then we die. And that's where our current healthcare kind of spends a lot of time, space, money. And that's where we all spend a lot of time, space, and money too, is in this sick space. What we want for the future, and what these people who are disruptors like Dr. Sinacropi, myself, other solutions that are out there, is we're really trying to get upstream, and we want to expand that health, vitality, and thriving space and have as little time in that sick time space before we die. So it's just really about leading a really healthy, vibrant life. And what that equates to is lower costs too. So these are things that we can all agree on. These are big goals, and we're going to start getting there. So people are coming up with new solutions, new ways to look at health into the future. And I think there's nowhere better to start than in the employer space too, because you have everything to gain from that. So today we're talking about there's more than a pill for every ill. And I think you're going to like what Dr. Sinacropi is going to talk about, because he himself is a classically trained physician, surgeon, and his eyes have been opened, and it's this kind of paradigm shift, which I think is really interesting and really cool. You're going to love hearing his story. But for me too, as a dietitian, years ago when I was working in healthcare, I remember getting an email from a physician really kind of scolding me for talking about nutrition in an article that went out to all the employees. And it's like, really, nutrition is very important to our health. We've known that for years. And it was like, we shouldn't be talking about nutrition and health. So we're, again, really dialing things back to the cell level when we're going to start talking about mitochondria here. And I know you guys are going to walk away inspired. So what the heck are mitochondria? I hope this takes you back to life science class or something back in high school or maybe junior high, where you learned about a cell and what a mitochondria actually is. And it's the powerhouse of the cell. It's where the energy is made. And if you maybe in college or in high school took biochemistry, you even took a deeper dive into this. As a dietitian, this was like the foundation of what we learned and how the body works. So this is where a lot of the disease starts happening is in our mitochondria. And that's what you're going to learn about today. And the two things that really impact mitochondria, of course, are diet. So what we eat turns into energy. And again, this is the powerhouse of the cell. So that's why it matters so much. So a little bit just about nutrition and mitochondria. There are many things that impact that in terms of what we eat. Some of those might be the types of fat that we eat. So it might be a ketogenic diet. The vitamins that we consume. So again, eating whole fresh foods that are rich in B vitamins and especially antioxidants or phytonutrients. There's different eating styles that can be really important to kind of maximizing how our mitochondria function. Those styles might be intermittent fasting or calorie restriction because we want to stress our mitochondria so that they improve. Other eating styles might be the Mediterranean diet, which are rich in berries, tomatoes, grapefruit, those kind of things. And then there are supplements we can add in too to just really boost the function of our mitochondria, which would be coenzyme Q10, carnitine. We could have a whole topic just on this nutrition piece. And I know Dr. Senacropi is going to talk a little bit about that too in his presentation, but just kind of set the table, so to speak, about how nutrition impacts our mitochondria. And so I formally here want to introduce you to our speaker today, Dr. Stefano Senacropi. He's a rising figure in the world of spinal surgery, renowned for his expert application of innovative spine surgery techniques. He's a board-certified spinal surgeon, and he's dedicated his career to restoring his patients to a pain-free life. Since joining Midwest Spine and Brain Institute in 2006, Dr. Senacropi has cultivated one of the busiest and most successful practices in the Midwest. His role expanded in 2012 when he was named the president and the CEO of the Institute. But now, Dr. Senacropi has made a significant shift in his mindset over the past 2 years, embracing wellness and holistic methods of patient treatment, including gaining expertise in nutrition, diet, exercise, and biohacking methods. He is the founder of the Hypercharge Performance Longevity and Recovery Clinics in the Twin Cities, and they plan to expand to 7 locations by early 2025, and will be rolling out franchises later in 2025 as well. He is the host of the podcast Wellness at the Speed of Light, which is a long-form video podcast featuring renowned guests to discuss traditional, holistic, and cutting-edge treatments. And I was just on his podcast last week. And he is passionate about helping to educate both the medical community and the general public on strategies to halt and reverse metabolic health crisis that is on the brink of collapsing our medical system. So I want to welcome Dr. Stefano Senacropi now, and he will share his slide deck too and share his expertise on this topic. And welcome.
Thanks so much for that really amazing introduction. I really don't like to sit here listening about things about myself, but what I really want to emphasize in the introduction is that I trained at Columbia University in New York City. Had the opportunity of training with some of the most world-renowned physicians, but yet that training is absolutely what you mentioned, a classical training, which means that my mindset has been quite similar to other physicians that came before me that were Western trained, and that is a lack of knowledge of nutrition, biohacking, somewhat diet, which I became familiar with pretty soon after I started in practice. But we have a huge problem in our country. And this is why I'm so excited about taking on this role as a wellness physician, starting the podcast, and being on a webinar like today. And I'm so honored to be on this with Brenda, who is absolutely a pioneer in the world of nutrition and everything they're doing with Launch My Health. Here's the problem. We have a $4.1 trillion sick care system, as Brenda has nicely outlined. Now, 129 million people are estimated to have a chronic disease in the United States. That's a third of the population. A third of the population. What does that lead to? That leads to people not feeling well, not leading good lives, struggling to support their families because they have trouble at work, having brain fog, having difficulty with all kinds of things, but more importantly, being a lot of medicines and having a lot of procedures. And most of this is preventable through lifestyle medicine, modifications in diet, nutrition, and then other things such as healthy mindset, improving mental health, and then biohacks, which I'm so passionate about. Now, going back to the American healthcare system, again, if you're in a car accident or you have a really severe condition, there's nowhere better than the American healthcare system. The problem lays, though, in our inability to keep people well because we don't spend enough in the wellness space. We are not making this a priority. Again, it's a sick care system, and we per capita spend the most in the world on healthcare, but yet our chronic disease problem is worsening over time. Obesity is worse, diabetes is worse, mental health is worse, our bone health is worse. I can go on for a long time. So how does that all correlate with mitochondria? Mitochondria are an ancient engines that have been absorbed into our cells. I am banned in our household almost from saying the word mitochondria because I use it so much, because ultimately it's all about the mitochondria. So can you imagine your trillions of cells are fueled by these tiny little engines? If they are not functioning well, what happens? That leads to chronic illness and sickness, and almost every single disease that you can mention is going to go back to your mitochondrial health. And that is not the way I came out of medical school thinking. This is not a way that I came, early in my practice thinking. This is only from doing self-research and learning from other, wellness gurus that are out there, other tremendous sources of information, and then going back to the basic science, doing my own research, and then trying to help people all over the world to improve their health. So these mitochondria, these powerhouses of the cell, if those aren't working, you're not working well. For those employers that are on this call, your employees are not working well. They're suffering from all kinds of illness. So on that note, let's go to the slides and let me show you how many things are involved with mitochondrial dysfunction. So if all these little engines are not working at the best, where are we going with this, right? So we've got neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. Almost every heart disease is related to mitochondrial dysfunction. You've got metabolic and endocrine disorders. Now, type 1 is different, but type 2 is the big one that we can do something about. And there's something called metabolic syndrome, where all your metabolic health is out of order. Autoimmune diseases are directly linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. This has been known about for decades, but how are we approaching it? I believe that we have some tools now that we can really make a significant difference. Most of it is through education, but a couple different examples: multiple sclerosis, lupus. Those are just a few of the autoimmune diseases that are caused by mitochondrial dysfunction. Now we're talking about mental health, neurobehavioral and psychiatric disorders. How many people that you guys know, yourselves, your employees, are suffering from these things? ADHD, bipolar disorder, mood disorders such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is way more common in our society than is often thought of, gastrointestinal disorders. Pretty much all of them have some mitochondrial dysfunction associated with them. Next slide, please. Anything that causes fatiguing illnesses, such as chronic fatigue syndrome, Gulf War illness, which is more of something that we see in veterans returning, especially from the earlier wars, fibromyalgia, but just generalized fatigue and burnout, including adrenal fatigue burnout, which is a huge problem, Cancers. Cancers are clearly associated with mitochondrial dysfunction. Again, details of all of this is way more in depth than what this webinar allows us for, but certainly follow for more videos and things where we'll go into cancer and how it's related to mitochondrial dysfunction. Chronic infections, the big ones. Post-COVID syndrome is directly related to mitochondrial dysfunction, which is why some of these biohacks can be so effective at improving those dysfunctions. Lyme's disease, but there's also a whole host of other post-infectious disease, such as Epstein-Barr and others. And then another common brain dysfunction, which is way under talked about, is concussion. There's many more people that have concussions than we know of. Sometimes you just have to ask to figure out that they're having concussion symptoms. Concussion can respond very nicely, but you have to target mitochondrial health to improve their concussions. Next slide, please. So targeting mitochondrial health. Sorry for this busy slide. I'm going to go through these quickly for the sake of time, and then I'm happy to take your questions, but you can read through these as this will be available for you at your convenience. So intermittent fasting. What intermittent fasting does is it creates something called autophagy, which basically means that your cells and your mitochondria are able to take out the trash. So when you don't feed them, when you're not constantly stuffing food particles and the residual of that into your cells are able to take out the trash, so to speak, and this heals the cells, heals the mitochondria. Regular exercise, especially high-intensity interval training, quality sleep, microbiome health, which I very much encourage you to look into the microbiome program at Launch My Health, which is incredible. Healthy fats, red light therapy, which we're going to talk in depth in a minute, which is very stimulative to your mitochondria and can increase energy production and ATP. Pulsed electromagnetic frequency, we create magnetic fields around your organs, but all the way down to the mitochondria, and can recharge, literally recharge your mitochondria to make them work better. NAD supplementation, which again is beyond the scope of this talk, but it is a molecule that reduces and becomes depleted after age 40 significantly. So we do encourage people to have NAD supplementation, especially after age 40. Stress reduction techniques, including meditation, yoga, breath work, and others. What's the common factor in all of these? Why does it work? Because those all put us in a parasympathetic state, which is the opposite of the fight or flight state. And so when you're in a parasympathetic state, you are releasing the hormones of love versus the hormones of stress. And this can make a massive impact into your mitochondrial health. Cold therapies can improve your mitochondrial health. Reducing toxin exposures. One thing I talk about very often is the fact that plastic exposures, some exposures in our foods, exposures to heavy metals, exposures to things in the air, including things which we might not even think about, like damage that we can get from 5G and 4G towers, can all create permanent mitochondrial damage, which can be reversed to some degree by these techniques that we're going to talk about. Making sure that you have an adequate protein intake is absolutely critical for cellular and mitochondrial health, and then staying hydrated, right? I don't have to get into how important water intake is and having an appropriate daily water intake. Next slide, please. So what are we doing at our wellness center? So just going back for a second, a couple of years ago, I started diving down the rabbit hole of mitochondrial health and wellness, and I was turned onto biohacks. And eventually I saw the power of these biohacks. They were so incredibly powerful, both in our friends, family, and then we started treating a small group of clients, that there was no way that me and my partners were not going to start clinics. And so we decided to launch something called the Hypercharge Human Performance Recovery and Longevity Clinic. And we offer 5 pillars, which we have scientifically vetted and feel from a physician standpoint are the most important baseline treatments for health. So these include red light therapy, exercise while under oxygen therapy to get you hyperoxygenated, very similar to hyperbaric chambers, but a different way to deliver the oxygen. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, which I mentioned briefly before, which involves creating an electromagnetic field around the body, improving the body's biofield, which then helps cells and mitochondria to work better. This is proven science. There's so many articles on both PEM therapy, oxygen therapy, and over 6,000 articles on red light therapy. There's nano-V structured water therapy, which actually increases anti-inflammatory molecules in your body by a proprietary mechanism that they use. And then a big one in our clinic is something called class 4 laser therapy. Basically, to make it simple, class 4 laser therapy is a much more powerful way to deploy near infrared light, similar to red light therapy, much more powerful, much more directed. And so we can treat injuries, we can treat all kinds of ailments, including peripheral nerve damage, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and others, but we also use class 4 laser therapy to treat the brain. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. Now, I want to stress before we get further, both red light therapy and class 4 laser therapy are FDA approved to treat musculoskeletal disorders and pain, but we use them for so much more. The number of studies and the evidence has not risen to the level of FDA approval yet. But I actually had the director of the Harvard Department of Photobiomodulation, Dr. Paolo Cassano, on my podcast yesterday. That'll be out in a couple of weeks discussing this. And there is so much excitement to what we can do with near infrared light and also potentially green light down the road and other things. And he has seen dramatic improvements in all kinds of chronic diseases, specifically in brain disorders and psychiatric disorders. And again, not necessarily FDA approved, but the evidence that we see as clinicians is so powerful, it's hard to even get the excitement out in a webinar like such. Now, let's move on to the next slide here. So what is photobiomodulation? Okay, I know I already said I was banned from using the word mitochondria in my house. I'm close to being banned on using photobiomodulation. When I talk to my colleagues, surgeons, physicians, physician extenders, whoever, about photobiomodulation, I personally get somewhat upset if they're not as excited as I am when I let them know what photobiomodulation actually is. Let's think about this word for a second. Photo, light, bio, tissue, right? Biology, bio. So human tissue, and modulation. So let's think about how important this principle is. We can modulate and change cells, mitochondria, tissues, organs, and the entire body by shining a light on it. It's very fascinating. There are certain types of cells called fibroblasts, just to get your excitement levels even higher. What fibroblasts do is they're involved in wound healing. Now they move. They have certain mechanisms where they can move, and you can see them moving a bit under a microscope over a time release, over a period of time. If you stimulate them with the right frequency of near infrared light, they move faster. In fact, they're almost doing a dance. And we see that clinically, where when we treat people with photobiomodulation for wound healing, the wounds heal much, much faster. This was seen way, way back, early century. It was shown at NASA. This has been around for a long, long time, wound healing utilizing photobiomodulation, but yet it's still not popular in our society because of the focus on medicines and procedures where we are given things like light and we can treat patients so effectively using this. So photobiomodulation, shining a light on the tissue like you see in the slide, and improving tissue function. Below where it says improving tissue function, you see the mitochondria. So how does this all work? When you shine near infrared light on the mitochondria, it is absorbed in the mitochondrial wall. There is a bunch of enzymes on the wall. The big one is cytochrome C oxidase, without getting into the weeds on this, but it actually absorbs the light and then tells the mitochondria to produce adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is the gasoline of the engine. So it's increasing and boosting mitochondrial function. So you already have an engine. If it's working well, it's going to work better. If it's not working that well, it's gonna start working more normally. And so think about how much disease reversal we can achieve just by getting those mitochondria going again. Now, some people might be skeptical on this. Well, how in the world is light going to make me better? That makes no sense. I've never heard about this. My doctor didn't tell me about this. No one's notified me on this. Well, have you seen plants grow? Right? Plants grow leaves, right? And there's something called photosynthesis. If you believe in photosynthesis and you believe that sunlight makes plants grow, then I can tell you the process is exactly the same. It's just a different wavelength of light that's being absorbed, but it is exactly the same process. And this is how we can stimulate cellular healing, cellular repair, and get that mitochondrial engine really revved up and working again. Now, one other quick thing on the way that photobiomodulation works. Again, I hope you're excited as I am. Not only does it stimulate the production of ATP, but then the mitochondria, which are an ancient organ, okay, thought to have been basically absorbed by primitive cells that swallowed bacteria, which are the mitochondria. Mitochondria has its own DNA. It makes its own decisions. It's the most fascinating structure. That mitochondria, through certain processes, if you stimulate it correctly, the mitochondria then sends a telegram to the nucleus, which is the brain of the cell, okay? So the powerhouse sends something to the brain of the cell, and that telegram tells that cell, hey, start making different proteins and don't die, don't be sick. And so literally it can shut cells off from dying. So instead of taking cells that are about to die, healthy cells, it can auto-program them to so-called come back to life. I like to call it the Lazarus effect. That's what photobiomodulation can do. Next slide, please. So I apologize for the small writing. I thought it was going to come up a little bit better. All this is showing on the left-hand side is laser is shining the light. So that would be akin to laser therapy. And again, you can on your own time go through all the things that it can do, including angiogenesis, which is improving blood flow, all kinds of things, improving muscular health. It's incredible for nerve improvement and so on and so forth, and bone health. But you can see that light, it just doesn't stop at the skin level. This is the most important concept I want you guys to learn from this slide, but it can get very, very deep. And that's showing near infrared. On the right-hand side, that is the money slide on this. Each different wavelength of light is going to penetrate at a different depth. And so if you take something like blue light, which you can see there, it's only barely penetrating into the epidermis. Obviously, that's not going to help your organs, but blue light has been used by dermatologists to help in multiple skin conditions. Now you have green light. Green light is very exciting. It doesn't penetrate as deep, but through certain mechanisms, including supercharging your blood cells, as well as penetrating through the eyeball and creating this electric reaction that then releases endorphins in the brain, it can dramatically improve the endorphin release in your body, which can decrease overall pain. So we are using it in our clinics as a pain management tool, but also as a tool for improving mood and other things, because obviously a flood of endorphins is going to help a lot of things. And just very quickly, because I'm not going to talk about green light much on this webinar, there is a massive study underway at the University of Arizona that just got a huge grant for green light management. And they are looking at green light to decrease pain after surgery. Another tool in the toolbox to be able to minimize the amount of narcotics that patients are receiving after major surgeries or that chronic pain patients have. What a tool we may have. And we're seeing it clinically in our centers make a huge difference in pain, but also overall mood and the feeling of wellness. Now, the big ones get into that red and infrared spectrum. If you look at the infrared spectrum, which is on the far right, you can see penetration all the way down into bone. Now, using different types of wavelengths, using different types of frequencies, there is an entire science as to what the best wavelengths are, what the best frequencies are. But the takeaway message is these can penetrate deeply. They can flood this type of light into your trillions and trillions and trillions of mitochondria, which then can lead to improved cellular function. So if this isn't exciting you, I don't know how else to do this other than jumping or screaming or doing something else. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you just a little idea of how some of this is delivered, and I wanted to talk about the slide on the right really quickly, because this is something that is absolutely going to revolutionize the way that we treat patients for a whole host of diseases. Now, on the left side, you see a class 4 laser being used on somebody's quadricep, and that will penetrate deeply all the way down to the bone. It'll flood all the injured areas around that quadricep with near infrared light, and that will stimulate tissue healing. It'll stimulate improvement in blood flow. It'll decrease pain going to the brain because it affects these small nerve fibers as well. And so class 4 laser therapy, again, this is showing on the left an FDA approved indication for this technique. On the right-hand side is one of the things that I could not be more excited about. Again, I had the director of the Photobiomodulation Lab at Harvard, Massachusetts General Hospital yesterday. We had a tour de force, hour and a half, 2 hour, I don't know if it was an hour and a half, 2 hour podcast yesterday, talking everything photobiomodulation, but really focusing on brain health. So what you see in that picture is a class 4 laser. In this instance, it's the Aspen laser, which is different than the Cure Wave seen on the other side. That will penetrate the skull, and you will get some of the near infrared light, which will be absorbed in the mitochondria in the brain tissues. Now, most of it is in the outer brain tissue, and we do focus on the frontal lobe because that's where most cognitive decline occurs. This is a technique that has shown massive promise in concussion, in Alzheimer's disease, in Parkinson's disease, post-traumatic stress disorder, all types of psychiatric disease, resistant major depression. I can go on and on and on. I want to share very shortly with you a study that came out of that institution, Harvard. In 2021, randomized controlled study clearly showed on MRIs and clinically that patients that had concussions, if you do red light therapy across the skull utilizing a proprietary specialized technique, you can have a dramatic reduction in symptoms. But more importantly, the MRIs showed healing of the brain. This is a landmark paper. Everybody should go and read it. It is going to change the way we approach brain health. Now, one of the things we talked about on the podcast yesterday, which I'm very interested in, is you can improve cognition with transcranial light therapy in normal subjects. So for anybody to have transcranial, it can improve their cognition almost instantly. This has been shown on immediate testing following red light therapy to the brain. But for cognitive decline in the average elderly person, it can make a huge difference. But I can tell you a lot of the people that are doing this are high-level executives, people that have a lot to do, busy moms and dads that have so much on their plate. And I had to ask, because I do this routinely to stay as sharp as I can, I asked Dr. Casano, the head of the Harvard lab, just to make sure that he was, practicing what he preaches. And he said, oh my God, I do it frequently, all the time, to stay sharp. So this is something that we both envision down the road is going to be a standard of care for brain health. I think that's it for the slides, and we can move forward from there. Great. So I'm back on. So in summary, before we get into questions, and I hope we do have some questions, otherwise I'm happy to fill the time. I can talk for days on this particular topic. I think that one of the key messages to get away from this today is, in our society, we are not spending enough time thinking about prevention and wellness. We have gotten trapped into a mindset of wanting the easy button or utilizing more conventional techniques, and those involve a lot of medicines and surgery. Again, as a surgeon, I'm very proud of what the medical system has done. Countless lives are saved by medication and surgery, don't get me wrong. But if we are spending so much on medication and surgery, and we spend more per capita in our country than anywhere else on healthcare, why is every chronic disease skyrocketing? Why is mental health worsening? We need to ask these questions, and I'm so glad that people forced me to start asking these questions, and now they're the only questions I really want to ask. And I'm making it my mission to be out here and to try to educate and make people aware that they need to be the CEOs of their own healthcare. They need to understand health and wellness. And if we do that, our society will be so dramatically changed, it will be shocking to people. We will reduce the diabetes epidemic, we'll reduce obesity epidemic, and we'll improve mental health. We'll do so much. For employers out there, spend dollars on health for your employees, health and wellness. What are you going to have? You're going to have more focused employees. You're going to have sharper employees. You're going to have people that are happier. You're going to have less mental health issues. You're going to be able to improve their chronic conditions. They're going to spend less of your healthcare dollars on insurance. Your insurance premiums hopefully will stay at bay if they are following things like Launch My Health. They're seeking biohacks. They're getting help for any mental health issues they have. So in summary, let's be CEOs of our own healthcare. I want you to be CEOs of your own healthcare. I want employers, take care of your employees, get them the help they need. It's low cost compared to the alternative. It's ridiculously low cost. To the healthcare system, I say, let's focus on health and wellness. To the government, let's focus on health and wellness. Let's allocate appropriate dollars, and we can live in a healthier, happier world. On that note, do we have any questions, or I can talk about some other interesting topics in health and wellness outside of what we discussed?
We do have a lot of questions. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I have many quotes that I wrote down for myself. I loved your, if you believe in photosynthesis, then you believe in this process. That was great for anybody who is looking at, like, what can you remember
I'm sorry, I can't.
to take away from this? Let me know when you can hear. Brenda, are you able to hear me?
I am able to hear.
Okay. Dr. Sinacropi is working on the speakers. Brenda, question for you.
Sure.
My leaders are all about the ROI. What are some ways that you've demonstrated ROI with this approach?
Well, I think one of the challenging things when you're looking at prevention and wellness, it's really difficult to get an ROI that you can actually see because you're preventing disease. You don't know what you're actually preventing. So we have to use algorithms and different studies that are out there as to what the cost savings might be, but it's very difficult to measure in a very short period of time, because the other thing is, like I mentioned in one of the first slides, it takes 10 to 20 to 30 years to develop a chronic disease. But I like what Stefano mentioned too. Your employees can start feeling better today. And so that's the other piece on the ROI too. What kind of ROI is that when you have absenteeism goes down, presenteeism goes down? You're going to get that ROI right away. And those are things that you can measure. Generally speaking, in nutrition, we see like a $1 for every dollar spent, you can save $3.
I can I was going to say, I was going to piggyback off of that really quickly. Sorry, I lost my audio there for a second, so I don't know if you had asked me a question, but on the return on investment, I can tell you that it is more when you look at individual patients. I just give you examples. I have so many people that I have put on nutrition programs such as Launch My Health and things like that, things in that category. I'm a big proponent of intermittent fasting. I'm a big proponent of high intensity interval training and other things. And now seeing it with the biohacks, where the return is. So for example, people that are having chronic pain, you can see reduction in pain literally with some of the biohacks the day of their treatment. Now, with some of the other things like nutritional changes and exercise, it may take a couple of weeks to see a noticeable difference, but we're talking about, and I see it because I see it in my clinic and I've referred patients out for a lot of this stuff now for quite some time, people getting back to work, people getting their lives back, sometimes even relationships that were fractured. Having that ability to repair relationships is very difficult for home life when you're in pain all the time, or you don't feel well, or you have brain fog. When we talk about return, just general return on investment, just for society, think about chronic diseases like post-COVID syndrome, which is so devastating. Treating them with a combination of nutritional changes and transcranial or whole body red light therapy can make a massive, massive impact very quickly. And the results in studies, clinical studies, we talk about return on investment, for example, for something like a post-COVID syndrome, it's almost universal improvement in brain fog from doing some of these modalities. But I can tell you, changing your diet, getting the toxins out, and going on an anti-inflammatory diet, like Launch My Health, promotes, dramatic differences in brain fog in almost all diseases, not to mention an entire branch of science now developing on neuro-caused diseases, including Alzheimer's and other things, where looking at intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets has dramatically improved patients' mental health. It's absolutely dramatic, and I'm excited to have some world-renowned folks coming on my show to discuss how those diets can impact really serious mental health conditions. And again, it is dramatic.
The one thing
Wonderful.
that I like about all of these modalities too, when you're talking about nutrition, exercise, all the biohacks you're talking about, is that they don't have the side effects that a lot of these medications that we're taking. You get prescribed one medication, which again, you need to listen to your practitioner and have a relationship and do what's best for you. But thinking about the side effects of a lot of medications that we take, or if you have surgery, the recovery time, those kind of things, it's just, these are things that people can do. Like you said, they can be the CEO of their own health, and they can start doing these at home, the comfort of their own home, and start improving their health.
Next question. Does red light therapy stimulate only in acute locations, or does it more broadly over time affect your whole system?
Love that question. Thank you so much for that question. That's right on. And so there's two types of red light therapy. You can have localized red light therapy, and there we recommend, I know there's home devices and there's other things, and they work some, but we recommend class 4 laser therapy, because that is an intense form of red light therapy that is designed directly to stimulate that particular area. Just to give you an example, if you have a hamstring injury, we target the hamstring. If we're looking at improving brain health, the more intense we can try to target the brain, usually the better, although there's limits to that. When you're having whole body photobiomodulation, or you're getting in a red light therapy bed, you're flooding all the cells in your body with red light, and that is giving you an entire basically recharging of your mitochondrial function in all of your cells. You're not getting quite the same dose that you do locally, but you are getting it throughout. So it's great for every organ. It's going from the skin all the way down to the bone and everything in between. And that is why we recommend that we treat your whole body with photobiomodulation with medical class devices. And then we target problem areas with more intense red light through class 4 laser therapy. Same thing. And one quick other thing for pain, we are now using a protocol where for pain management, we not only target the painful area, but we're also doing directed red light therapy treatment through the laser, directly targeting the brain centers where pain originates from. So you imagine we are approaching it from different directions. So great question. Hopefully that answered that well.
Wonderful. Lots of questions about how it works. So another one, are there studies on red light therapy looking at all skin tones? And are there any differences in effectiveness? Is there a spectrum of red light frequencies that are used?
Can you repeat just the first part of that?
Are there studies on red light therapy looking at all skin tones? Any differences in effectiveness?
That is an amazing, that's an amazing question. That's a next level question. And so absolutely. So skin tones are broken down into usually people use a scale, it's a 6 scale from light to dark. So skin tones is one of the things that we talk about so much, and that's actually why we choose specific lasers. And so the most effective laser wavelengths are in that 808 and in the 800s. Let's just say there's a lot of research on this stuff. Skin, the darker your skin, the more your skin is going to absorb some of the light. And so it'll actually heat up more. It's actually a very interesting phenomenon. One of the reasons that we brought the Cure Wave in is because for some skin tones, that actually operates in the 1200s range, which is excellent for penetrating darker skinned people. So we tend to use that more in the darker skinned people, although you're still going to get an excellent effect. But for maximal effect, there absolutely are certain wavelengths that can penetrate the skin deeper. I wish now that there's this amazing slide that shows the wavelengths and skin penetration. It also shows how much is taken up in bone and other tissues, and that's how we titrate the actual. We pick the frequency as well as the wavelength based on all of these different factors to maximize depending on what tissue we're targeting. But yes, there is a difference in skin tone and how much light you're going to penetrate. The lighter your skin, the easier it is to get further down.
Fascinating. Okay, another specific question. Can the frontal lobe red light therapy, I'm guessing others too, help with a traumatic brain injury or concussion that occurred a long time ago?
And you guys are on fire with the questions today. Thank you. I don't know where that question came from, but that's incredible. Absolutely. So the results in concussion management, again, a lot of the primary work is coming out of Harvard, but other great institutions. It's just an institution that we are actually working with right now. So it's someone that I have more contact with. And so again, that paper clearly showed that treating the brain with photobiomodulation can improve concussion symptoms. What we have found is that clearly photobiomodulation to the brain can improve concussion symptoms, even long-standing concussions. We have many testimonials of patients who have had long-standing concussions with nothing short of dramatic relief of their concussion symptoms. So if we can get down into the weeds of what happens in concussion, but those shearing forces, not only do you get an environment where the some of the, let's say the pro-inflammatory cytokines can damage the mitochondria, there's also actual shear. So some of the mitochondrial wall can get damaged. And so we are crystal clear. This is a known fact that mitochondrial dysfunction is a significant part of concussion. It's not everything. So we recommend a combination of photobiomodulation treatments, biofeedback, vestibular retraining, all types of other modalities, but the photobiomodulation is the most exciting thing that has happened in concussion management, literally in decades. This is from the mouth of the director of the Harvard Red Light Therapy Clinic. So don't take my word for it, take Harvard's word for it.
Awesome. That's great. That's inspiring. I mean, especially you think about people who maybe were in sports growing up and had concussions and are still feeling the issues from them. Okay, other they're very specific questions. These are awesome. Can you talk about sunlight and the processing of vitamin D hormone in comparison to these therapies?
I can share a little bit about vitamin D, and then Stefano, if you want to chime in your opinion on this too. But vitamin D in the sunlight is another really important component to mitochondrial function. Generally recommended to get morning sunlight, 20 minutes. There's more and more research coming out about how our bodies create vitamin D and versus supplementation. And actually in Australia, they just came out with new recommendations in that country. And they changed their stance on sunscreen there. So really interesting changes in that it's better to get that morning sunlight. Of course, there's more to it. As Stefano said, we could kind of go down a rabbit hole on certain topics. But again, vitamin D really important in making vitamin D and shown to be better than a supplement form. So I don't know if you'd add anything else to that, Stefano.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to vitamin D is I think it's all, you know what, you asked a great question. So I think that we need to think of mitochondrial health as just a multi-pronged approach. It's not one thing. The biohacks, especially with red light therapy, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, oxygen, all these things, they all supercharge the mitochondria. It's very exciting. And then green light is a whole other, can of worms that is very exciting what's happening. But that in and of itself can help dramatically, but you want all the systems to be functioning at maximum pace. We in the westernized medical community have really gotten siloed into old concepts of levels and where people should be. Before I get to vitamin D, one of the things I will say is, for example, women that have perimenopausal symptoms, the recommended level of testosterone where a lot of doctors will allow people to live is so far below what an optimal level really is. And so if you don't get people optimized on level, you need it all, because otherwise you can do all the red light therapy in the world. Yeah, it's going to make you feel better. But if your testosterone level is in the tank and you have perimenopausal symptoms, you're going to feel terrible. Right? There's just so many different ways we have to do it. Same with vitamin D. And that's why I wanted to preface it. There's so many things. We can go on with all these things, including protein recommendations and on. But for vitamin D levels, there is a disconnect between a lot of the societies on ultimate vitamin D levels. If you look at the Board of Endocrinology, it's way higher. Okay, vitamin D levels should be 75 plus than it is for some of the outdated levels. Okay, so what I will tell this audience is your vitamin D levels should be high. They should be 75 plus, right? When we look at your blood titers, and I would encourage you to go into your doctors, do your own research, go in with the papers and say, I want a vitamin D level and I want my vitamin D level to be this, because otherwise doc says I'm not going to be functioning at my best, and you're not. And so it is a combination of these tools that is going to get your body, functioning better. When you go to the gym, right? I hope you guys don't do this. Maybe you do. But when you go to the gym, you don't say, you know what? I'm really going to focus the next 3 months on my left bicep. I'm just going to do left bicep curls. I'm sure that's going to make a major difference in the rest of my body. That is what doing one of these things is, right? Different things give you more power. Some may be more important than the other, but my plea is they're all important. So if you look at all the different pillars, if you just break it down into physical, right? Into physical, nutritional, mental health, and then spiritual, and then you put biohacks as a fifth thing to just doing the baseline. If you really focus on all those and you stay on that path, boy, what a difference. What a change it's going to make in your life.
Love that.
Yep, I'm pumped. I'm gonna go get my 20 minutes of sunlight here. It's a beautiful day in St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay, one more question that's more personal, and then I want to give you time. We just have a few more minutes to talk about next steps. We've got an awesome give too. So this is pretty specific. What is the optimum dosage of coenzymes Q10 for anti-aging process?
That's always like a loaded
I
question,
know.
right?
It
What's-
depends.
it,
My engineer husband would say it depends.
it depends. But in general, the dosage for that is like anywhere from 50 milligrams up to 1200 milligrams. I think the best thing to do would be to meet with a practitioner, meet with a dietitian, a physician who's trained in this, who can give you the right dose for you. But more than likely, probably more up on that higher end. And a lot of times I recommend too, when people are starting a supplement, to start on the lower end. They can work their way up, see what kind of response they have to it. But it's definitely a great supplement. And again, this isn't medical advice for anybody. Make sure that you do your own research and meet with a qualified, health professional before you do that too.
Awesome. These are really good, excellent questions. I learned a
They
ton.
are.
Okay, I want to say one awesome give that Hypercharge Clinics is offering. I'm sure that there are many more, but I put it into the chat. So if you're located in Minnesota and the Twin Cities, Hypercharge is able to offer a free introductory session to anybody who has attended today. And the phone number to schedule that is in the chat. It's 612-440-0513. And their clinics are located in Maple Grove, Eden Prairie, and Woodbury right now, and they're rapidly expanding. So hopefully they'll be available close to you if you're not in those locations very soon. And then Brenda, I'll start with you. Any last final thoughts or takeaways that you want to make sure people leave with? And then we'll go to Dr. Sinacropi.
I just think this is an exciting time in healthcare. We have so many people that are coming up with new innovative ways to approach our health. And in fact, mitochondrial health, we're going back to the basics. It's at the cellular level. It's what we all learned in science class, but there's so many things we can take control of and do. And because I'm a dietitian, because I have a nutrition company, I have to say there is never a replacement for a healthy diet. It's just, like Dr. Sinacropi said, you can't just, exercise your elbow and expect everything to come together. So make sure that you focus on eating whole fresh foods too. It's a huge component to creating energy in your body in that powerhouse cell. And we are happy to work with any employers to all of our products, all of our education, focus on improving mitochondrial health in their own way, whether it's brain health or your hormones. So really excited to host this webinar today and to just educate people on this new upcoming space. And Stefano, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I really appreciate the invitation to be on this webinar. I myself learn, I always learn from you, Brenda, when I hear you talking. I think that in closeout, improving your mitochondrial health is really the key to reversing chronic disease. I don't want to simplify it. It's not easy, but it is the way to do it. And all of the things that we talk about are the way to do it. Now, we have a tagline at our wellness centers, and it's recharging the human battery. Okay, and that just doesn't go for the modalities we offer, but also for intermittent fasting, for eating clean whole foods, for getting rid of anything that has ingredients other than the thing that you have in your hand. Like, for example, a banana, the ingredient of a banana is banana, right? You don't need 19 or 25 things to figure it out because you don't know which one of those things is lodging in your mitochondria, making you not feel well. So again, that tagline, recharging the human battery. I'm about to launch a radio show on 9:50 a.m. It's called Recharging the Human Battery. I could not be more excited about mitochondrial health. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this and are wanting some more. Please follow us on LinkedIn. please come to the clinics and check out some of the biohacking stuff. But most importantly, be CEOs of your own healthcare, do research, follow real experts out there that know what they're talking about, are passionate about what they're talking about. And that's how your health, your family's health is going to improve. And for the employers, same thing. Really think about what we talked about today and figure out what offerings you can give them to do what we talked about as far as mitochondrial health management. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. And you will receive a recording of this in your inboxes. Be sure to check your junk mail too. If you don't see it by tomorrow afternoon, it should come in tomorrow morning for you. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Sinacropi. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank
Have
you,
a great day.
everyone.
Bye.